everybody.
In the Malliard. Oh.
The Malliard Report.
Hey.
It's the Malliard Report.
The opinions expressed on the Malliard Report are those of the host and participants and are not intended to and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any simulcasting radio network or sponsors. All listeners are advised to make their own decisions. And now your host, Jim Malliard.
That is me. Jim Malliard, your host. Nice to have you all here this evening, this morning, whenever you may be listening. Have you ever experienced something that you just could not explain with a definitive answer? Go over to Metaphysical Lemonade to quench your thirst for curiosity. Share your experiences, ask a question, join them at metaphysicallemonade.org. My guest tonight is one of those guests that I am happy to have back on the program, and I'll give away the secret. I don't want to say he bugged me, but he was persistent. Is that a good word for it, Garnet?
I think so.
Garnet Schoen.
Garnet.
Jeez, oh Pete. I'm sorry. Now I'm going to butcher your last name, too. Schulhauser. Oh, good grief. And I even went back and tried to, because I made the correction on the pronunciation in the last time I had you on, and apparently I didn't write it down well enough. But we won't let that stop us this evening. Okay, so you got a new book out since the last time I was on, but let's catch people up that, well, the last show didn't get recorded, so it's I don't want to say breeze through, but let's catch people up on the first two books so we can get to the third one.
Okay, well, my first book was Dancing on a Stamp. The second one was called Dancing Forever with Spirit. And it really tells the tale of my encounter with one of my spirit guides. And how that happened was that I was, this was back in 2007 when I was still practicing law. And I was walking down the street one sunny afternoon in May, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, a homeless man jumped out in front of me. And he looked like a typical homeless man with long stringy hair and a scraggly beard and dirty slept-in clothes. But there was something very different about this guy. He had these amazing, dazzling, sparkling blue eyes that transfixed me, held me to one spot on the sidewalk in front of him, and I didn't try to move away because his gaze was penetrating deep within me, and I felt like he was looking into the depths of my soul, and that he knew everything about me, everything I'd ever said or done. He knew all my hopes and aspirations, all my fears and anxieties, even my deepest and darkest secrets. And I wasn't sure how he knew this because we'd never met before. But at the same time, his eyes were sending me this wave of pure, unconditional love that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. So I stood there like a deer caught in the headlights, like I was in a time warp. And after some time, he broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" Then he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. And when I finally collected my wits, I decided I better go into the store and try to find him, find out who he was. So I went into the store, but he was nowhere to be seen. And I went back out on the street and I walked up and down for several blocks in each direction, hoping to spot him. But he had basically disappeared into thin air. And so the next day, I came back to the same street at the very same time, hoping I could find this man. And after walking up and down for 10 or 15 minutes, I finally spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. So I went up to him and I said, "Who are you and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "Oh, I'm a soul just like you, and I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." And then my skeptical lawyer brain kicked in, and it's hard for lawyers to turn off their brains, even when they try. But it kicked in, and I said to him, "Why do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because you look like you've been sleeping on the street for weeks, and you smell like a dead fish." Well, he just gave me a big smile, and he said, "Looks can be deceiving because you look like you're a successful lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade." He said, "You can turn around, go back to your office, and see if you can find the answers you've been seeking all your life on all those emails on your computer, or you can sit down and have a chat with me." So luckily, my intuition says, yeah, I really got to take a chance with this guy, because what did I have to lose? Half an hour of my life? no big deal. So I sat down, and that was the beginning of a dialogue that went off and on for the next few months. And he told me his name was Albert, and he was actually one of my spirit guides in disguise. And he had come, as he said, to answer my questions, but he also wanted me, and he told me early on, much to my surprise, that he wanted me to write a book about his revelations so that they'd be available to everyone in the world. And I was reluctant at first to do so because I never even dreamed of writing a book. It was not even on my radar screen anywhere. But he was gently persuasive and persistent, and eventually he convinced me that I should go ahead and start the manuscript for my first book, Dancing on a Stamp. And so I retired from the law about a year after I met Albert because our dialogue was still ongoing. And so then I wrote the manuscript for Dancing on a Stamp, which was published in 2013, or 2012 rather. And after I'd finished the manuscript for that first book, Albert disappeared from my life for a little while. And then he came back in a very surprising mode. I woke up one night in my bed because I heard a noise or something startled me. And I looked towards the bedroom door, and there it was, a ghost-like ethereal figure standing in the doorway. And as it moved closer, I could see it was my old friend Albert, but he was in astral form. And so I said, "Hi Albert, what brings you here?" And he says, "I've come to take you on a series of astral adventures, taking you to the spirit side, to other places in the universe, and to other parts of our planet, because I want you to write about what you see and hear in your second book." So then he literally reached out and grabbed my astral hand, pulled my astral body out of my physical body. I turned around and looked back, and my physical body was still sound asleep in bed. And so then, with Albert holding me by the hand, I floated up through the ceiling with him, up through the clouds, and we hovered at a high spot above our very beautiful planet. And then from there, Albert led me through to a shimmering doorway to the spirit side, and that was the start of my very first astral adventure with Albert, and the initial stop was on the spirit side. And I had a number of adventures with him during that set of encounters, which are detailed in my second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit. Then after that book was finished, he again disappeared from my life for a while, then reappeared again one night in my bedroom, and he always did this unannounced. He never told me in advance when he was coming. But he came back again, and this time he said, "I'm taking you on another set of astral trips to different parts of the universe, to meet different people on the spirit side, and to see other scenes on our beautiful planet, so you could write about it in your third book." And so off we went on the second set of astral trips, and those adventures are chronicled in my third book, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, which was just released in March.
Which just makes an amazing journey that you've been through over the course of, well, I guess it's coming up on 10 years now.
Yes, that's right. It is yeah, exactly 10 years ago in May when I first met Albert.
Whew. So, one of the questions that I seen scrolling through the chat room as we were going by is, did you ever reach out and try to touch Albert?
Yeah, during my very first encounter as on the street as a homeless man, I did reach out and touch him. He was very real, very physical. So he was very solid. But he told me that I was the only one who could see or feel him in physical form. So he appeared only to me, and if somebody else had been walking by the street that day, they would have seen me sitting all alone on a bench. They wouldn't have seen Albert. And so after the first three encounters, Albert no longer appeared in physical form, but he was just a voice in my head, and we communicated by telepathy. And when I asked him, "Why did you show up initially as the homeless man?" and he said it was his way of easing me into the conversation, because had he just started talking to me out of the blue as a voice in my head, I likely would have thought I was losing my mind. And he's right about that. So this was his clever way of introducing me to him so that I would not be upset or disturbed when later he just spoke to me telepathically without showing up in physical form. So it was a very clever maneuver on his part.
Yeah, my chatters are on it tonight, and they want to know, have you ever astral traveled without Albert?
No, I haven't. I've actually had sort of tried on my own, and I've read some books on astral traveling. There's a lot of them out there. I've never been able to do it, but when Albert comes, I just follow him, and he seems to lead the way. So I've only been able to do it with Albert leading me.
That's interesting. I don't know. Because on one hand, I could understand why it doesn't work, and on the other hand, I think because you're saying about all these books that people do it. However, I don't know. I don't want to be disparaging to those people, but without
No,
a guide, so to speak.
There are some people who have learned how to astral travel on their own, and I've read some of their books. And one notable, of course, is Robert Monroe, who wrote a number of books about it, and he has an institution, a school in Virginia that a lot of people attend. I don't know how successful it is. I haven't tried to go there. I've been too busy with Albert, but people do astral travel. In point of fact, Jim, every one of us astral travels every night, even though we don't remember it. Because every night when you sleep, your soul leaves your body temporarily, travels to the spirit side or to other parts of this planet, except that. And then, when you wake up in the morning, your soul's back in your body, but you're not allowed to remember it for the most part, other than sometimes you may remember it in the form of a dream or some image that sticks to your mind when you wake up, but you're not aware of all the details. So every one of us astral travels. I did it with Albert, and I was allowed to remember what I saw because he wanted me to have a very clear memory of what I saw so that I could write about it in my books. So that's the only reason I remember those travels with Albert. I don't remember any of my other astral traveling, every night when I sleep, only when I'm with Albert.
It's funny you mentioned dreams, because I mentioned this probably 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago on the show, about a strange dream that I had about. And then the first part of it was very vivid, very lifelike. The first part of it came true, but the second part was so, I don't want to say fantasy, but that's the one, fiction, fantasy, whatever. But once the first part came true, because it was more rooted in reality anyways, it makes me sit here and ponder that second part.
Well, we often get messages from our guides in our dreams, and not all the time. Some of our dreams are just sort of mind blow-offs that, with our subconscious trying to let off steam for what's happened during the day. So not all dreams have messages, but some dreams do from our guides, and they're intended to steer us in some direction or another, or give us some insight into what we should be doing. And a lot of times it's hard to distinguish the two. But if some dream feels really lifelike to you, it was likely there was a message embedded in there for you from your guides. And even though it's not easy to figure out what it is, you really have to sit down and try to remember what it was that you saw in your dream and what it meant for you. So, dreams are very much of a message medium for your guides. The trouble with most dreams is, of course, is that in my experience, and the reason I know that my astral travels were not dreams, I've had people say, when you wake up and you remember where you've been, how do you know it wasn't a dream? And I say, because my memories of these astral trips are so much more vivid and clear than any other dream I've ever had in my life. Because for most of my dreams, I remember bits and pieces when I wake up, and within an hour or two, I've forgotten everything. And that's the typical thing for me with a dream. But with these astral trips, I vividly remembered quite clearly all the details for weeks and months after that. Enough time for me to make notes on my computer, which eventually were transcribed into a manuscript. So that to me tells the difference, is that these trips were so much more clear and vivid in my memory when I woke up and in the days following than any dream I've ever had.
That's just interesting. Like I said, so it's been 6 weeks since I've had that dream, and that is the dream that I remember. Can't pull another one. So that's interesting how we're talking. But I might just turn this whole show over to my chat rooms tonight. They're just doing good, but. I had this question on my notes, but I'm going to give them credit for it because they came up with it as they're listening, so they deserve some credit for it. Do we all have spirit guides that we may or may not know about?
Absolutely. Every one of us has, 2, 3, 4, maybe more spirit guides, and they're basically our life coaches. They're souls on the spirit side who are there with us 24/7, watching what we're doing, constantly sending us messages to try to steer us in the right direction. The right direction being the direction or the goals we had planned for ourselves before we were born, Jim, in our life plans. So our guides are always there, except that, unlike my conversations with Albert, which were sort of like very direct. I mean, when I'm conversing with Albert, it's like you and I conversing right now, Jim. It's very clear. It's just like a conversation between two guys having a chat over a beer. That's a very unusual situation, done specifically to allow me to remember in clear detail what he told me so I could write about it. But for the most part, for most people, the messages from our guides are very, very subtle, like flashes of intuition, gut feelings, whispers in our minds, messages in a dream, external events like coincidental events. and all too often it's easy for us to just blow by without really recognizing these messages for what they are, not paying attention to them with other things in our life. And we have so many other thoughts cluttering our minds every day that these messages often get lost. And what Albert says is that the best way for us to better hear what our guides are telling us is to learn how to quiet our minds, sit quietly, quiet our minds through meditation. And after a lot of practice, we'll become better listeners and we'll be better able to hear what our guides are telling us, because they're trying to steer us in a way that will make us have a very happy and fulfilled journey. It gets a little frustrating for them when we just sort of totally ignore what they're telling us. But it happens all too often.
Now, this is just going to be your opinion, because I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this, but do you find meditating first thing in the morning or right before you go to bed better?
I like doing it both. I like to meditate pretty early in the morning after I get up, and then like to do it again before I go to bed. But that's just my preference. You're right. There is no right or wrong time or place. It's whatever happens to suit an individual person. And when you pick a time and a place to do it that seems to work for you, then stick with it. But there's no magic answer. It's like whatever works for an individual.
If you had the magic answer, oh, never mind. Anyways, you could make, well, I don't know how much money you could make, but you could probably make a few. The next question, I'm just going to go with them guys tonight. They're good. Are spirit guides random, or are they assigned to you, or do you pick them when your soul's being, I don't know.
They're actually picked. You pick them. You enlist their services when you're on the other side before you're born, when you're planning your life, when you're preparing your life plan. And your life plan, you pick all the things for your earthly circumstances, like your name, the place you're going to be born, the first language you learn, the identity of your parents and siblings and cousins and aunts and uncles and so on. You pick the souls who will play the roles, the important roles in your upcoming life. So you have to choose them, and they basically have to choose you. They have to agree. And one of the important selections you make is your spirit guides. Because they play a very important role. They don't incarnate with you, but they stay on the spirit side to help coach you and give you guidance. And so quite often your spirit guides are members of your soul group. So you may have incarnated with them in previous lives on Earth, and so you're very familiar with each other. They've had a lot of lives on Earth, which gives them the experience to know what you're going through, and that helps them a lot in terms of their guidance and their coaching. So you definitely pick your spirit guides. They have to agree to do so, of course, but that usually isn't a problem, because if there's a spirit guide for you in this incarnation, they may ask you to be with your lives, and you, of course, will go along with that.
So I'm going to do this one right now, because I want to wave hello to Debbie over there. She's the administrator of Paranormal Forum, paranormalforum.net. The Paranormal Forum question of the night comes from her. I have to be obvious and overstated about it. How do you know the difference between a good guide and just somebody or some spirit screwing with your head?
Well, there are no spirits who deliberately try to screw up my head. So all my guides are good guides. I mean, that's just sort of like a truism. There are no bad spirit guides, and there are no spirits on the other side of the veil who are sending messages and trying to screw me up. Albert says that just doesn't happen. Spirits over there don't try to interfere with your life, with your incarnation. They don't try to make things more difficult for you. To the contrary, any spirit who's paying attention to your life or who chooses to send you messages are really trying to help you. They're not trying to screw you up. So everybody over there who's communicating with you are good spirits.
Well, that's good to hear, because sometimes I wonder about things because, well, maybe I overthink things. Maybe that's my problem. But that's a whole nother can of worms. Let's get back to dancing with Heavenly Bliss. Did I write that wrong, or is it
Dance of Heavenly Bliss?
Okay. I wrote it wrong. That's good. Tell me a little bit more about what's in there.
Well, it's quite interesting. As I said, it's another series of astral trips. And it really was one of the purposes that Albert took me on these trips, was to demonstrate to me the vast diversity of life, not just in the universe, but in our own planet that we're not aware of, and that everyone has a different life path, a different journey, and so we should always be very circumspect about when we're looking at other people on our planet, other humans, other animals, is to not be judgmental, to understand that we're not in any position to judge other people because we don't know what they planned for their lives before they incarnated. You don't know which lives they've lived beforehand, which planets they lived on. You don't know what challenges they're facing now or what they may face in the future. So it was really much of an eye opener to show me that there's a vast diversity in our universe and even in our planet that we're not aware of. And he was trying to demonstrate to me that we should keep this in perspective and don't think even for a second that humans are sort of the be-all and the end-all in terms of life in our universe, because we aren't. And so he took me to a number of interesting places. In terms of how we treat the animals on our planet, it was very eye-opening for me to have a conversation. This is telepathic conversation with a killer whale, an orca, in an aquarium in California. Albert took me there, and I had this great conversation. This orca basically conveyed to me that whales and dolphins and a lot of other animals are very intelligent, sensitive, emotional creatures. And in some ways, they're more intelligent than humans, but they don't have any technology. And they communicate, the whales do, with each other by telepathy, and they communicate with their cousins on other planets in the universe. They're very distressed at the fact that humans have been abusive towards them over the last number of centuries. And even today, humans are still fairly abusive in terms of hunting and killing them and catching them in traps and imprisoning them in water parks and poisoning their water with our pollution. And she said, all we want to do is live in peace and harmony with humans, and we can't understand why they are so abusive at times to our race and to other animals on our planet. So it was really a heartfelt plea. She said, please tell your fellow humans to release me from this prison. I just want to roam freely again in the blue waters of the Pacific, where I came from before they captured me, and that's all I really want. And please learn to treat us with dignity and respect. So it was very much of a heartfelt plea from her that she hoped that humans would be able to change their ways and learn to live in harmony with whales and dolphins and all the other creatures on our planet. So that was one of the eye-opening trips I had. The other one, which was really quite surprising, Jim, was that Albert took me to a cavern underneath the North Pole. And there I had a conversation with the consciousness of Mother Earth, Gaia. Now, this surprised me because my view had always been that our planet was nothing more than clumps of inert molecules forming rocks and mountains and deserts and oceans and boulders and that sort of thing. I had no idea that there was a consciousness attached to our planet. And I spoke to this consciousness, again by telepathy, and she was a wonderful, wise spirit who was fiercely protective of all of her flora and fauna, everything on her planet. And she wanted everyone to live together in peace and harmony. And again, like the orca, she was quite distressed at all the abuse that humans had been heaping not only on her, but on her other creatures. And she was really tired and distressed at the way we pollute her waters and her rivers and oceans and her soil and her atmosphere with our chemicals and noxious fumes and garbage. And she was really sending me a plea again to go back to my fellow men to say, you really have to stop this pollution, otherwise it's going to end badly for you. And she said, way back when, and before the Industrial Revolution, humans had very little environmental footprint on the planet. Like, we didn't pollute very much. We didn't really cause a whole lot of problems to other creatures, and so we were sort of inconspicuous in terms of the sum of the whole on the planet. But since the Industrial Revolution, we've ramped up our ability to affect other creatures and to pollute the environment, and we've become, in her terms, like an invasive weed that has taken over a garden and smothered out all other plants. And so again, she made a plea to humankind, please stop your pollution, please treat my other creatures with more dignity and respect, and don't be so aggressive, don't be so violent, and don't be so abusive to everything around you. And the interesting thing, Jim, and a lot of people shake their heads and say, I can't really believe this, I don't think that's possible. Gaia says that she has the power to fight back. She can actually increase the frequency and tempo of natural disasters, on our planet, like earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, droughts, fires. And she has been doing a bit of that lately to wake us up, to shoot a warning shot across our bow to tell mankind that if they don't change their ways, and very quickly, things could go very badly for them. And so a lot of the things that are happening around us, people say it's climate change. Well, it's really Gaia sort of flexing her muscles a bit and trying to make us really wake up and change our ways and stop the pollution and learn to live in harmony with Mother Earth and her creatures. So that was a very surprising revelation. She's not vindictive or vengeful. She really wants to have humans live happily on her planet. She just doesn't want them to take over control of everything and destroy other animals in the process. So very interesting encounter.
Yeah, I was going to say that I'm sitting here listening and I'm thinking, I agree that we should stop polluting, and it'd be an interesting conversation to have. So that's, yeah. Okay.
I know it's a stretch for many people to understand that Mother Earth can have a consciousness, but I tell you, I didn't believe it either until I actually had the conversation. So, people, I guess they can believe it or not believe it, but even if they don't believe it, they should understand the message that came from that conversation, which is we really have to curtail our pollution and stop our abuse of other creatures on this planet so that we can all live together in peace and harmony. That message, I think everyone can understand and appreciate.
Yes, I mean, the message is the message. And as they say, don't shoot the messenger. We need to stop polluting the planet. So, back to the spirit guides, because that seems to be what people are interested in right at the moment. And this question popped up. Are spirit guides in competition with angels and other positive deities?
No, not at all. They work closely in cooperation. And so in addition to spirit guides, every one of us has one or more guardian angels. And they're angels, they're different entities from our spirit guides. They perform a different function. And what happens with our guardian angels is they are there. They're also watching over us 24/7. And they're there to prevent an untimely physical death on our part. And untimely means a death before our souls are ready to leave the incarnation. Because no one dies by accident. We die when our souls choose to leave the incarnation. They have the absolute right to decide that, even though, of course, our human minds aren't aware of that timetable. And so what happens is because humans on Earth don't remember their life plans and they have free will to take actions and make decisions, because of this sort of a oftentimes random clash of free will actions by humans on our planet, sometimes an event might arise that could result in our physical death that was unforeseen by our soul before it was ready to leave. In that case, our guardian angels step in and they will prevent that tragedy from happening. And they do that by, most of the time, just by sending strong intuitive messages for us to change our course of action, or they can sometimes actually physically intervene on Earth to prevent an accident. So, for example, if you're scheduled to fly on a plane that the guardian angel sees is going to end up in a crash, your angel will send you a strong intuitive message beforehand that it would be a good idea for you to change your flight, change your plans. And if that doesn't work, they can actually physically intervene, like causing your tire to go flat on your way to the airport so you miss your flight. And there's a number of other ways they can do it. They can actually physically manifest themselves into humans or other creatures to actually help you out of a dire situation. And they do that all the time. And most of the time, we're not aware of their intervention. It's done so subtly. And so most of us have been saved many times in our lifetimes, but we don't recall it as such. We don't appreciate it was the aid and help from our guardian angels. So guardian angels do that. Spirit guides do another function, but they work together. There's no competition. There's no conflict.
It kind of ties right into you're headed right towards my next question, but you stopped short of it. Will they allow us to see brief views into the future, or is that all something that they shouldn't be showing us, or we shouldn't be worried about it either way?
Well, your angels and your guides won't show you glimpses into the future, but some people can get glimpses through, like there are psychics and mediums who get sort of very limited glimpses of things in the future or the most probable outcomes of things in the future, but it's never a clear picture and it's not etched in stone. So you can get glimpses if you happen to be psychic or you're a medium and you have that special talent, but I say it's not etched in stone. So if they, for example, say to you, Jim, that a year from now you're going to win a big promotion at your job, that's just the most probable event that's going to happen, assuming that everything continues in the normal course. And so if hearing that you say, "Oh, I'm getting a big promotion, so now I can slack off and not work very hard," then you're going to change that outcome and you won't get the promotion. They're assuming that you'll continue to work hard and be diligent in your job, and then that prediction will come true. So it's never etched in stone. It depends on having the normal course of events in your life carry on, as they normally would. So those are just very brief glimpses of future events. Psychics and mediums don't get to see the whole picture, and they don't get to see everything in your future. They can get glimpses here and there. But your guides and your angels do not send you those messages, because that is not something that's in your interest generally. They want you to sort of stumble through life on Earth and figure out things on your own, and meet the tests and face the challenges that you really want for your evolution.
The question just popped up. Do you have any experience being clairvoyant, psychic, any of those type of things?
No, I'm not personally clairvoyant or psychic. I'm not a medium. I don't communicate consciously with other spirits on the other side. I have met a number of other spirits during my astral travels, but when I'm not astral traveling, I don't have that connection, so I don't do readings for people. I've asked Albert if he would help me do that, like if he would sort of be the one communicating the answers to the people who had questions, and he said no, that's not his role right now, and not my role. That might change in the future, but right now I only speak to Albert, and he only gives me revelations and tells me things that he wants me to write about. So he doesn't even give me personal advice. I can't get personal advice from Albert about what I should do in my life. He says I have to figure that out for myself, just like everyone else.
And that leads me back to the next point I jotted down. Now, I'm not sure if they were joking with me, or I shouldn't even bring this up, but I'm just going to do it because I'm not sure if they were joking or not, so we're just going to play along with it. Can spirit guides impact somebody else's, not your karma, but somebody else's karma?
Yeah, they could, but they tend to not do so unless they are sort of invited by the other person's guides. Like, they don't try to interfere with what the other person's guides are doing. And so if they're invited in to do something, they will, but they just sort of don't go off on their own and interfere with people's lives unless it happens to be the person, the entity that they are the guide for.
That's what I kind of figured. But, like I said, it just kind of popped up, so it popped in my mind, and I was hoping that my spirit guide would take somebody out, but I guess, no, wait. Never mind. Before I get in trouble, I'm talking to a lawyer. Oh no, what did I just do? No, I scroll on your page today, and upon the page for the new book, it came across you're part of Stonehenge. I had Dennis Stone on end of last year. Goodness, that's almost 6 months ago. And he was talking about America's Stonehenge. So now I'm fascinated about these megalithic structures being built. So can you help me shed some light on Stonehenge for me?
Yeah, it was in one of my trips to the spirit side. Albert took me to the Akashic Records, and there I got to view basically the building of Stonehenge in England. You know, the English Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain. And what I saw there was it was one of my past lives as a Druid priest, and I was on the Salisbury Plain about 3000 BC. And I had a dream one night where a spirit, an angel, told me to go to the certain spot on the plain outside of the village and wait there, because there'd be a messenger from the gods for me to take. So I went to this plain, and then I noticed this spaceship come floating down slowly, and it hovered about till it got about 3 feet above the ground, and then the door opened, and out came a human. He was a large human, about 8 feet tall, but very much of a human. Same face, arms, legs, fingers, and everything else that we have. And his name was Mogons, and he told me that he was from a planet in the Andromeda constellation, a planet human civilization. And he said he came to enlist my help, that he wanted me to organize the villagers to help him build a structure. And he said the structure was intended to be a navigation beacon, because that particular spot in the Salisbury Plain was on one of the galactic ley lines, and it was important for navigation. And this beacon was to help ships who were traveling in warp drive, find their bearings and get to where they're supposed to go. And so he unfurled a big parchment, and there was detailed drawings on this parchment. And so he showed me exactly sort of what he wanted. And then I went into the village and I gathered the people and I said that we've had a visit from the gods. This guy was a god. He wanted us to build a structure so that we could. I didn't tell him it was a navigation beacon. I said it was a place to honor the gods. So, with the help of Mogans, and he had two very interesting tools that made it much easier. He had a precise laser cutting tool which could cut into the quarry and chop out the monoliths that he needed for Stonehenge. And he also had an anti-gravity wand. So once they were cut, he flashed this wand on it. It became basically weightless. And that's how the villagers could transport these rocks from two different quarries miles away to the plain in Salisbury. And then following his instructions, they put these all into place into the structure that we now know as Stonehenge. And then when the structure was completed, and the reason he needed this built was because there was special subatomic properties of these rocks that he needed to work in conjunction with his power box to make the beacon work. And so the final step was he went into the ship, retrieved this power box, which he placed in the center, and then basically flicked a switch and the thing was going. And then years later, he came back when the beacon was no longer needed and retrieved his power box and took off. And the villagers never knew what the real purpose of Stonehenge, and they used it for ceremonial and religious purposes over the years. And they just thought they had been paid a visit from one of the gods. But anyway, that was how Stonehenge was built.
That's fascinating. I've personally believed that there had to have been something. I never figured out what. Helping people with the pyramids, the Stonehenge. Maybe I'm just lazy anymore. Maybe I'm a millennial and lazy and don't want to do things. But I know, yes, that they were tortured and killed if they didn't want to work. But good grief, I think you'd be killing a lot of people after moving 800-pound stones all day.
Yeah, and I've always wondered about that too myself, Jim. And then when I saw this the scene in the Akashic Records, it really all made sense. And I didn't ask him about the pyramids in Egypt or in the Yucatan or any other place. But at some point I'm going to ask him about it. And I suspect that there was help from visitors from the stars and all those as well, because it just makes sense that, to me, it just seems incredible that those primitive people with their primitive tools could have constructed those huge structures without a little help. And anyway, I just find out about Stonehenge. Don't know about the others, but my suspicion is there was help from somebody else there as well.
Well, I can promise you, me and you aren't going to Home Depot and building an ark tonight.
I don't think so.
Even with all the tools and the wood that are already present, I just don't see it happening. I get. Speaking of biblical things, how about demons? I know this is always a hot topic with people. Because you said there's a lot of positive out there. What about the negative?
Well, Albert tells me that there are no evil spirits per se. There are no demons or spirits that are sort of inherently evil. He says everyone on the spirit side is very benevolent, very loving. They don't intend to mess up our lives. They all have one single purpose, which is to help themselves and every other soul evolve and grow. So he says there are no evil spirits, contrary to what a lot of people believe. He says that there are sometimes what he terms spirits that are somewhat mischievous, and they will do things which they think are funny pranks to people on Earth. They don't intend anything harmful, but they enjoy pulling an odd prank here and there, which sometimes when we're the subject of it, we think that it's a malevolent, evil spirit causing us harm. But it's not. It's just some playful antics of a few spirits that have too much time in their hands, I guess, according to Albert. So, but they're not evil. They just get a kick out of playing pranks here and there on people, which the people on the receiving end sometimes think is harmful, evil spirits, trying to do damage to them.
Yes, I mean it does seem at times that, I don't know. Maybe it's just bad luck too. Of course. If it wasn't for bad luck, I probably wouldn't have no luck at all. But I seen that, also in the book right up there, I seen that you had some interesting, well, in this religion theme, that you came in contact with Jesus? Is that what I read?
Yes, I did in my third book, yeah. It was a very interesting meeting because it was on the spirit side, and Albert said to me, And now I'm going to introduce you to two very interesting souls. He says one was a paragon of virtue, and the other was an evil monster. And I couldn't for the life of me, try to conceive of what he was talking about. So we went walking through the meadow on the spirit side there, and we came upon two souls seated on a bench, engaged in a very friendly conversation. And as I got closer, then my heart skipped a beat because I recognized one of them was Jesus Christ in a white robe, and the other one was Adolf Hitler in his military uniform. And I thought, what on earth are these two polar opposites doing, sitting side by side having a friendly conversation? But Albert brought me here to just demonstrate clearly to me the differences between the spirit side and what happens on the planet Earth. Because I began by talking to the soul whose last life had been lived as Adolf Hitler, an evil monster, as we all know. And after introducing himself, he then morphed back into his natural, what he called his natural form on the spirit side as a handsome young man named Matthew. And he said to me, yes, I lived my last life as Adolf Hitler. I'm terribly sorry for all the harm I did. I was an evil monster, but it wasn't planned. It wasn't intentional. He said that before he was born, he had planned a life where he might be involved in politics and be around some of the levers of power. Didn't know that it would go the way it did. When he got there, his negative emotions got the better of him, like his anger, fear, hate, greed. And that's how all the evil things, that they sprung from this out-of-control negative emotions. And he said he's very sorry for what he did. He was anxious to incarnate back on Earth once more to try to make amends, to live a better life. But he told me that just to demonstrate how things are different on the spirit side, he said that he has met with many of the victims of his death camps on the spirit side, and there's been total reconciliation, so that those victims do not feel any hatred or animosity or desire for revenge against him. They give him nothing but unconditional love, and he to them. And he says that's how it works in the spirit side. Whatever happened to you on earth, whatever you did, whatever you were the victim of, you leave that behind, other than the memories and the lessons you learned. When you cross over to the spirit side, it's a whole new ball game. You're all just another soul, and you love each other unconditionally, which is what happens to all souls on the spirit side. So it was really quite an eye-opener. And then Jesus got his turn to speak, and he said, I agree with everything that Matthew has been saying. He said that he came to Earth like over 2,000 years ago to to help humanity become more spiritually aware. He was asked by the Council of Wise Ones to incarnate. He said that he was a master soul, and he had learned during his life how to focus his thoughts into very powerful beams of energy. And that's how he created his miracles. That's how he learned to walk on water and turn water into wine and raise people from the dead, because he was a master soul. And he did this to draw attention to himself so that people would follow him and his teachings. And he assumed that it would likely be the beginning of a religion once he had passed on, but he didn't know quite how it would all play out. And he said that some of the holy men who followed him, some of the popes and cardinals and so on after his death and resurrection, to some degree hijacked the church and molded it into their own view of how things should be, which wasn't quite exactly how Jesus would have done it. But he just said, it was out of my hands at that stage. I can't control over what happens to the people who follow me, and so be it. I wish they'd done some things differently, but in the meantime, they've done a lot of good in my and a religion that formed based upon my life and death. The Christian religion, has done a lot of good in the world, even though it's gone off track in many areas. And I said to him, well, if you had these miraculous powers, why couldn't you save yourself from dying on the cross? Why couldn't you just float down from the cross and escape? And he said, I could have done that, but I chose not to because I thought that my death on the cross and subsequent resurrection would make a more dramatic statement to my followers in terms of starting my religion. So I let it happen. And so that's why he died on the cross. And he obviously did ascend. He's a master. And he's still a very great soul, very compassionate, very keen to see what's happening on earth. And I asked him, would you ever come back again to help us out? Because God knows we need a lot of help on our planet. And he said he would if he was asked to by the Council of the Wise Ones. That hasn't happened yet. So It remains to be seen. But it was an amazing conversation with one of the historical giants of our times. In fact, in the history of mankind.
Yeah, I was gonna say both of them are in that realm of interesting, really interesting conversations to be having.
Yeah, absolutely. They were both giants in our history, but polar opposites in terms of one being as I said, an evil monster, the other being a paragon of virtue. But Albert brought them together for me to see the fact that once you're back on the spirit side, polar opposites can become best friends and loving souls, because that's just how it happens on the spirit side. So you don't carry over anything, any emotion, any hatred or animosity against somebody on earth, no matter what they did to you, once you cross over to the spirit side. So that was an eye-opener, and it was it was a shock effect. He wanted me to see these two polar opposites seated side by side and having a friendly conversation.
Well, that would be quite a shock. I can't, as I'm sitting here trying to picture it myself, putting myself in your shoes. Boy, that'd make for good radio, but that's a whole nother conversation, I'm sure. But actually going through and having a serious conversation with them, regardless of the platform, would be interesting. Because I sit here and try to think of questions for people, and I'm sitting here thinking, all the different things that pop through my head as you're going through that. Now, the other thing that, being the UFO paranormal show host that I am, caught my eye, is that the Roswell incident. It seems this thing, I don't want to say will ever go away, but it just seems to keep being the incident. But you had
I actually got
there.
to view.
Yeah.
I actually got to view the Roswell crash, and it was in the Akashic records, because this has already happened. And Albert took me there, and he just said, "Look, you probably had some curiosity about this. I mean, the speculation about Roswell has been around since 1947." And he said, "I'll show you." And so there I saw, and what happened was that this scout craft from the mothership was hiding on the other side of the sun, and the scout craft was doing a reconnoitering reconnaissance of Earth, and for some reason there was a slight malfunction. They were actually scooting up towards a weather balloon that the U.S. Army had put up high in the sky, and they were coming to check it out. And there was some malfunction in their avionics, and they end up smashing into this balloon, which caused further disturbance in their instrumentation, and they ended up crashing, in the desert below. And they sort of hit, initially in the sand, and then skipped, and then plowed into the bank of a small hill. And so I watched this, in the Akashic records, and I watched that I could see on the inside that they were three little beings about 3 feet tall. Two of them seemed to be lifeless. One was seen to be moving, and actually pushed a button that opened the hatchway to their craft. And then I noticed, and of course this is all, Albert sort of speeds the things up and shows me, does fast forwards and all this. Eventually the trucks and jeeps and so on from the Roswell Army base came out there, and they took out the three little beings from the craft, took them back to the Army base. Two of them were in fact dead. One was still alive, and the surgeons, the doctors, tried to save it, but they couldn't. And they loaded the spacecraft onto a flatbed truck with cranes, and they hauled it all off to the Army base. Eventually, it was transported from there to Edwards Air Force Base, and then eventually from there to Area 51 in Nevada, and along with the bodies, the preserved bodies of the three little aliens, including the one that they tried to save, and it didn't work. And so that was the story of Roswell. And when the Army officials told reporters after that the crash that some people had said they'd witnessed was really the crash of their weather balloon, and they held up the wreckage, they were quite right. It was the wreckage of the balloon that this craft had smashed into. They didn't tell them about the spacecraft or the beings or anything else. It was all hushed up, as you know, initially by the brass of the Army, and eventually right up to the top levels of the U.S. government. And it's been hushed up ever since. Someday they will reveal the truth, because we're getting close, Jim, to the point where the governments of the world, particularly the U.S. governments, are going to acknowledge that we have been visited by aliens from other star systems for many years, and they're going to sort of gently introduce us to that topic. And they haven't done so up to this point because they're afraid of inducing fear and panic in the masses. And so that's why they in their doubtful wisdom, in my view, have been keeping this from us. But someday it'll all be out in the open. We'll actually have open contact with these with the ETs from the other planets, and they'll tell us a story about Roswell. But until then, there's nothing but speculation and other than what I saw with Albert. And of course, I described that in my book, Jim. A lot of people are going to scoff at that and say, that's a bunch of malarkey. I don't really care about that. I just described what Albert showed me.
I do think I think we're going to get. I don't know if the government's going to do it or somebody is going to leak out the information. I don't know. I think it might leak out from somebody first, and then the government will have their hand forced. I don't know.
That could be. It's going to come from some way, and maybe somebody else leaks it, and the government then is forced to disclose, or the government decides to just do it on their own. Albert said that will happen. He didn't say when, but he says it would happen, and then sort of the truth will be out there, and hopefully it comes sooner rather than later. But I mean, as you've probably noticed in the last 10, 15 years, there's been more and more reported sightings of UFOs from many different people in many different countries, and it's sort of a build-up to what will eventually be the sort of the full disclosure. They're trying to condition the masses on Earth with the concept that there are intelligent races from other planets and from other stars that have been visiting Earth, and that we really shouldn't be too concerned about them because Albert says they're all benevolent. They're here to help us. They're not here to take over the planet or to enslave us. Had they wanted to do so, they could have done so ages ago, but they're here to help us.
So probably the last official question of the night for you is, I'm supposed to ask you about crystal skulls.
Yeah, I don't know anything about crystal skulls. Can you elaborate?
That's what they told me to ask you. So I actually do have a backup question here, because I don't know what they want me to ask you. That was the question, so we'll just skip past it. And now this will be it. I'll ask it from Germantown here. Ask him where we go, in quotes, where we go when we die.
Where we go when we die, we go to the spirit side, or what other people call the other side. Some religions call heaven. Doesn't matter what you call it. It's a place of extremely high vibration, because when our physical bodies die, our souls, which are really entities of energy, then leave the physical bodies and go back to the very high vibrational state of the spirit side. That's where we come from. That's our true home. And we only make temporary excursions into physical bodies here on Earth and other planets for the purpose of growing and evolving. But when we die, we all go back to the spirit side. That's regardless of what we did on Earth. So even if you're a bad guy, if you're a terrorist, if you're a murderer, a child abuser, they all go back to the same place as the good guys. And that's because there's nowhere else to go. Everyone goes back to the spirit side.
That's good. I like the positive outcome of it all. Now, I'm going to give you this last... Well, you've got a couple minutes. Don't feel rushed. Where people could find you and find the books and all that fun stuff before we get out of here.
Sure. The best place to source my books is on my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com, which is kind of hard to remember. But if you Google dancing on a stamp, you will get to my website. On my website, I have information on all three of my books. You can download a free excerpt. You can watch a book video. And there's buy links there to all the popular online stores like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Powell Books, and a bunch of others. All you have to do is click on those. It takes you right to the place where you can order my books. Also on my website are the links to all my social media posts, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, Instagram, and so on. And in another part of my website, I have posted the videos of all of my previous radio shows, so they can go through from the last, it's almost 3 years now since my first show, and listen to all of them. And this show here, I think, is number 92, Jim, that I've had in the last 3 years. So they're all there, and there's lots of information on my website for them to peruse, and my email address is there. And if anyone wants to send me a comment or a question, I'd love to hear from them.
Which leads me to my official last question for you tonight. Book 4, yes, no, maybe so?
Yes, book 4. Book 4 is actually nearing completion. And so in the next couple of months, I will finish it off, send it to my publisher, and hopefully it'll be published sometime in the next year.
Well, you know what to do. You did it this time, so you know what to do. I don't even have to tell you what to do. You got it figured out.
I hope so.
Well, I want to thank you for the time tonight.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Jim. It's been a great show, and I really enjoyed all the questions from your listeners.
Yeah, they made it good. They made it easy on me tonight. I wish they'd do that every week, but well, I guess maybe if they did it every week, I'd be out of business.
Some very good questions that I certainly hope that they will dial into my website and find out more about my books.
I think some of them will, so thank you. Okay, and there we go with that. We'll say the call quality was good. My direct ad links, directadlinks.com. Final thought of the evening. Let's check here and see how much time I have left. Okay, so I have time to say this correctly. Don't get me wrong about this. This is not about any one person in or any show, any one network, anyone in particular. Preference. Now, if it does offend you, it might be about you, and you might need to, well, look at yourself and say, really, he might have a point here. Now, what am I saying? What am I preferencing this all about? Good call, good question. These are my opinions, obviously. Of course, they don't reflect on any network because I'm not on any network. But I got a little email the other day with a screenshotted status from another network provider. And I'm aware of this person, and well, I understand it's a business. And that's the first problem we have to understand. If you treat it like a business, treat it like a business. And if you're going to sell memberships and sell advertisements and have a donate button on your site, and you're still coming up short, maybe you need to review what you're doing instead of harping and begging people for money. Maybe that's the problem. Now, you go to tmr247.com. There's a spot up at the top where you can buy your space for advertising. You can search high and low. There isn't a spot to donate. I'm not that way. My show is advertising supported. Get it? Got it? Good. That's my business. I don't have a donate button. I don't sell podcasts. Now, for those people out there who want to donate to me, here's what you do. You go over to Facebook.com, you go over to Malliard Report on Facebook.com, and you click share. That's how you donate to this program. Or you click retweet. Or you take the time, the all-important time, and tell one of your friends that you heard a good show tonight, and you want them to hear it as well. If it's from the ambassador, or anybody else that you've found interesting that they might be interested in, grab a link and share it with them. That's how you donate to this program. I don't want your money. You could go buy a t-shirt if you want to throw me $2 or whatever it is that I get off a t-shirt sale. That's how you donate to this program. Now, if you want to buy an ad, we'll talk about that, but that's a whole nother ball of worms. You get something back from that. I believe that you get bang for your buck. I give away the podcast. I want you to get something back if you're going to give me money. So, to bottom line it all, remember, click share, click retweet, click follow, click subscribe to the newsletter. There's over 100 shows for free on my website. There's a free stream that you're currently listening to if you're listening live. It's free. It streams 24/7. It's there for you whenever you want it. It's amazing. I don't understand. It's my business. It's simple. I'm not begging for money. I'm begging for shares and likes and reviews. And I don't do that often. Somebody said another network contacted me and said all I have to do is mention their site on my show. I sent a message to a bunch of people that listen to my show and say, how often do I mention my own site on my show? I don't. it's all good. I love it. And it is what it is. And if you haven't checked out the new promo, which makes the show really easy to share, it's pinned at the top of my Twitter, and I'll leave it there for the next... I'm probably going to retweet it for the next few months, because I love it. And I got to thank Brian Anderson of BrianAndersonVoice.com for helping me level that all out. With that being said, you're going to hear some more Brian Anderson work here. Does good work. If you need a promo, you need to get this done. Go talk to Brian. That's it. I've had enough. We're out.
If you're looking for a radio show.
Well, before we flip that on-air sign to the off position, a quick reminder. For all things about the report, previews and reviews, go to tmr247.com.
See what lies beneath paranormal activity. The Malliard Report. Yeah, the Malliard Report. Tune in and listen every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, right online. It's the Malliard Report. Yeah, the Malliard Report.
Good night.